Hey, I'm Lindsay Mills. I'm here at Telluride TV again with the two subjects of the interpreters, Paul Braun and codename Phillip Morris. How are you both doing today?
Doing good.
Doing very well, thank you.
Welcome to town.
Thank
First
you.
time in Telluride?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you feel
Yes,
so
it is.
far?
It's nice.
It's nice now that we got here.
Yeah.
It's a
High
little
elevation.
High elevation, a little difficult to get here, but no, it's a beautiful community.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, where you're from, and how you got connected with the directors and producers of the interpreters.
You asking me or asking him?
Let's start with you.
No, start with him this question.
All right, Paul, hit it.
One more time, I'm sorry.
Who are you? Where are you from? And how'd you get connected with the directors and producers of the interpreters?
My name is Paul Braun. I was a soldier in the United States Army. In 2009, I was with the Minnesota National Guard, where we were deployed to Basra, Iraq. Phillip ended up becoming our interpreter over there, and we obviously got a pretty special bond between the two of us. When we were able to get him to the United States, we were interviewed by NPR, and the producer was Andreas, and afterwards I'm just taken aback by your guys' story, which we thought was rather amusing because it's just us, but taken aback by your story, and I'd like to take this forward and do a documentary film with my partner, and we discussed it over and said, okay, well, let's give this a shot, and something that was completely foreign to us.
Yeah, definitely. Having cameras in your face.
Not used to that at all.
And now it's easy,
Yeah.
it's
Second nature now.
it's daily habit, you know.
Yes. So, this is a very important story, and knowing that the political environment today is still presenting issues for people that have helped us all over the world, especially interpreters in the war and getting them over here and back to safety. Tell us about how your relationship required a ton of trust and how that grew over time in working together.
I don't know, since day one, I felt like there is something good with this guy here.
Just electric.
It's, I don't know, something, it's hard to explain it. And, by time, by days, by everything, we're getting closer to each other, we get to know each other very well. I found seriously, there is no limit for brotherhood. It's like there is no limit. There is no, it's like not limit with something. Now he's like, literally, he's my best friend, and I will say he's my first brother. I've been like my family over in Iraq, they love him more than me. My mother, she loves him like so much.
My parents love him more than me.
Yes, when there's no blood relation, it makes it a little bit easier, huh?
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know how to explain it,
And it was hard for us as soldiers because an interpreter is a necessary part of how we had to incorporate within the populace of the nation that we were in. However, we had to be very standoffish because we couldn't trust our interpreters. There's so many times where the interpreters would actually turn on us as soldiers, and excuse me, there were so many times where the interpreters would turn on us and soldiers by either working with the militia or actually directly trying to harm us. So it was a very difficult tightrope balance relationship you had to have an interpreter, and there was something special about Phillip right off the bat that you could tell there's something different about him. His intentions were pure, his intentions were good, but the interpreter that we just had before then ended up actually working for the militia and was trying to harm us. So we were very standoffish at first, but his personality was just electric, and we just absolutely clicked. So we had a conversation one day where we sat down and said, I just want to remind you, as you and I become friends, if at any point I think you're going to harm my soldiers and myself, I will not hesitate to shoot you. And he just laughed. And I'm like, you think this is funny? And he said, someday we'll sit in America and laugh over this conversation over tea. I never thought that would actually happen. And
It's happened.
it's happened.
Yeah.
Here we are today.
Often, every day.
I want to add something, please.
Yes, please.
Like a couple months ago when we went to New York, Barb, I call her my sister-in-law, she asked me, is the other interpreters have this relation with the sponsor or the sergeant or whoever, sponsored them to bring him to America? When I was just rethink about that, I never known someone has this relation with his sponsor.
Yeah, it seems
everyone like disconnect with his sponsor as soon he come to America, and I'm still live with him technically. Yeah.
As best as we can tell, we are the only soldier interpreter that actually not just come to the United States, but actually living together as well.
Yeah, it seems like a very genuine and unique relationship, which I think makes the story even more enticing.
My kids call him Uncle Braun.
Yes,
Yeah.
that sounds right. We may pick that up too. So, you know, this very delicate relationship and this very delicate dynamic over time, I'm sure, became simpler. Can you tell me a bit about the process in getting Phillip back to safety?
Well, it started back in 2009 when there was the British pulled out of Iraq and literally abandoned their interpreters overnight. And within a few weeks, we started getting the bodies being brought to us of British interpreters. They'd bring up and say, "This is my father, my cousin, my whoever." He was an interpreter for the British. The militia executed him last night for what he did. What can you do for us? Now, Phillip is having to interpret this over the body of a slain interpreter, the man who's doing the same job that he is. And after seeing 19 bodies over a 2-week period, we knew that we had to do whatever it took to be able to get Phillip to safety. And asking him, are you willing to leave your own country and having to leave your home for what you did to help us? And that's when we started the paperwork to see what we could do. And we knew it would be very daunting. We had no idea that it would be 3.5 years of challenges and paperwork and denials from the State Department and denials from his government, and finally getting the visas to get over here was very exciting. To receive that photograph of, I have my visa, what's next? I'm like,
go.
yeah, get to the airport as quickly as we can. And then now that we have Phillip here and we finally get him to safety, what about his family? And that was a difficult question that we had to ask to the State Department. To their answer was, well, what about them? And now it's that journey of what is it going to take to be able to bring an interpreter's wife and children here to the United States. So another 3-year journey began with that while Phillip lived with us.
Especially through the SIV program, Special Immigration Visa.
Got it.
Because the government, they put this program and make it so difficult. Both sides, I mean, this government and our government. back
Phillip
home.
and the other interpreters were promised that after 2 years of service, where they were in good service to our nation, they would actually be able to receive the documents within a few months to be able to come to the United States. After multiple years of service, however, it was, well, you really didn't work for us. You actually worked for a third party company called GLS, or Global Logistics Solutions. You didn't directly work for us. So that was the first hurdle of trying to establish that Phillip actually was embedded with U.S. forces, not just with our unit, but the unit after us, the unit after them, and then all the U.S. forces pulled out. So not having that direct line of communication and us trying to follow alternative means to communicate became very difficult as well.
Yeah, when your whole relationship was based on communication, that seems
It is.
seems difficult.
Ironically, Facebook Messenger ended up being our best form of communication.
Hey, that's a good plug there. That's very interesting. So, you know, looking at the hurdles presently, what do you see is the role of these countries that have this influence abroad and, you know, have all these people that are left behind at this point?
First of all, I gotta take this opportunity and say thank you for U.S. Army for bring our freedom to Iraqi people. And I feel so bad for the interpreters who are left behind, and they need really to take deep concern about this program to bring all the interpreters.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry to say that, but war, unfortunately, is gonna happen somehow, somewhere, sometime. So don't give yourself this reputation by leaving behind your interpreters who help you. So we don't this happen next time. They promise us in the program, the SIV program, they promise us 250,000 interpreter from Afghanistan and Iraq who serve with or behalf U.S. government. They will be willing to come to America. And the number so far didn't pass 10,000.
So many people left
Oh,
behind
yeah.
that played an integral role in the successes abroad. You know, I think that Mountainfilm, the theme this year, is very relevant to your story, especially the fact that it is over Memorial Day weekend. It's a critical time for our country to have some introspection and think about the people that are giving us our freedom and, you know, maintaining that all the time. Tell me a bit about what you guys hope to deliver with this story over the course of this weekend in particular.
Excuse me, I will start before my brother. To me personally, I want to deliver a huge message for especially the new generation in America. They don't appreciate U.S. Army. U.S. Army did great overseas. And don't worry about media, I'm sorry. Media is not telling the truth all the time, with my full respect for you guys.
Thank you.
And just, you know, take care of the interpreters.
Absolutely.
Sorry, buddy.
No, it's okay. As we as soldiers with the United States military end up having to go over to other nations, whether it's peacekeeping missions or in times of conflict, we will always need not just to have somebody translate the literal language, but interpret the customs, the courtesies as the language as well. And that's where Phillip really stood out, that's the role that he took upon himself for us. Unfortunately, as we've shown in history in the past, we have continually neglected taking care of the interpreters, and we can only feel so lucky that people like Phillip are still willing to step forward and not just help us, but help their country. Because as the U.S. military go into other nations, it's to help others. As much as people see it as a point of conflict, a point of war, at the end, our whole goal is to stabilize and encourage the growth within their country, which is what happened in Iraq. Without interpreters, we would not be able to accomplish these tasks. And not only helping out the locals that we were with, but also gravely endangers the service members of our military. If people are not willing to work with us and we have miscommunication and things are not established how we're trying to help others, then things turn dangerous for not just the locals, but also for us as well. And this is where innocents can get killed. So having Phillip and the other interpreters that we had to do absolutely amazing things coming forward and interpreting the customs, the culture, the language, and everything that we needed to have that. Going forward, we need to recognize that interpreters play such an integral role in our role in the military that we need to take care of them in the aftermath. Whether it's establishing a protection program within their own nation, for our hope is that they will be able to live in their communities, stay there, and help rebuild their communities, but also in the times of conflict like in Iraq and Afghanistan, where we would need to pull the interpreters on their own will, have to leave their own homes, unfortunately, and come to the refuge of the United States with welcome arms. We need to make that process a lot easier. Unfortunately, too much red tape gets thrown in, too much political environments start coming into play. We need to establish under any administration, under any side of the aisle, a way that the interpreters can very easily be established for what they did and for that a fast-track system for them to come into the United States. Being on Memorial Day weekend for us is very honorable. It was a very difficult tour that we were on, and we lost 3 of our soldiers. Our medic, Doc Wilcox, Wordish, and Drevnik were also killed during this tour. And Phillip did everything he could during that time, during those battles, to help make sure that we came home to our families. We only wanted to do the same for him, where he did everything possible to make sure that we could come home safely to our families. We wanted to make sure that his family could come over here safely and be with him. And on this Memorial Day weekend, we need to remember those sacrifices that those 3 brave soldiers and so many other members, and so many other of our service members were able to sacrifice everything for our freedom and for Phillip and his family, as well as for us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time. The Interpreters is premiering this evening at Mountainfilm and a very important screening on Monday morning on Memorial Day. We'll see you then.